Hello, White Sox fans, and welcome in to the Sox On Tap postgame show. It's Tony Marchese alongside NWI Steve. We're here to talk about the series up on the north side. Not a great result tonight, but we'll talk a little bit about yesterday's ball game, tonight's ball game, and just give out some White Sox thoughts here. Steve, how you doing tonight, my friend?
Whatever.
Yeah, you're sort of just here right now.
Whatever. You know.
Are you going to cry about it? Are you going to cry about it?
No,
I
I'm
know
not
there
going to
was
get
a lot of people.
Yeah. There were a lot of people. There were a lot of people yesterday who claimed to not care about the White Sox. They had their fucking panties in a bunch. You know, I mean, like it's funny. Here, I'll do one thing real quick here. I'll give you the 4 reactions of Cub fans when they lose games to the White Sox. So if the Sox are good and the Cubs are bad, it's derp, we're bad. You're supposed to beat us. If the Cubs are good and the Sox are bad, it's derp. Enjoy your World Series, derp. If both teams
Super
are
Bowl.
bad,
Super Bowl. I heard Super Bowl last night.
Couldn't even get the sports references correct from a supposed foosball player. You know, funny there. And then let's see if both teams are bad, it's derp. Well, at least people go to our games, derp. And if both teams are good, it's well, derp. At least I don't have to worry about getting shot going to a game at Wrigley, derp. Those are the 4 reactions.
Pretty accurate. There was a little bit of bad blood out there in the air last night after the Sox took one.
A lot of panties in bunches.
Yeah, Steve, I didn't expect the White Sox to win a game in this series at all. Just entering this, I did not expect the White Sox to win a baseball game here. Yesterday, Touki Toussaint on the mound for the Chicago White Sox, and Steve, for better or for worse, Touki Toussaint has been somewhat decent of a pitcher for our White Sox in his tenure here now. Any thoughts on his 4 innings that he gave us yesterday? It wasn't pretty by any stretch of the imagination. There was 5 walks there, only strikes out 4, and he does give up all the runs the Cubs were able to get in that ball game. But he's eating some innings. I would have liked to see a little more there with less damage done, but I mean, 4.47 ERA. Is he pitching better than Lucas Giolito since the trade? It sort of feels that way.
You know, I talked about this a couple of weeks ago or so. The biggest issue with Toussaint is he just doesn't throw enough strikes. At the end of the day, the stuff is actually pretty good when he is commanding the strike zone. He just doesn't command the strike zone enough. So when he's able to go out there and when he's finding the strike zone, he can have positive results. We saw that the start last week against the Yankees when I think he had 7 strikeouts to the first 3 innings there. You know, he had 9 overall. So he's got swing and miss potential there. It's just the not commanding the strike zone with consistency is always going to be the big bugaboo for him. And it's something that at this point in his career, he went from being a top prospect to now being a little bit of a journeyman. This is just kind of what he is at this point. It's very rare for a guy like him to kind of get passed around the league the way that he has and ultimately find that command and turn into a guy with pinpoint control. So you're just going to have to kind of take the good with the bad from him for the remainder of the season. There's going to be some bright spots. He'll probably have a start in there where he'll go 6 innings with 12 strikeouts and 2 or 3 walks and everything will look great. And then he'll follow that up with an outing where he throws 95 pitches in 4 innings and has 6 walks. That's just the Touki Toussaint experience.
And don't we love it, Steve? White Sox bullpen yesterday was able to get the job done. They were clean, Steve, pretty clean. You saw Tanner Banks, Ramsey, Bummer, Santos. The Sox sort of followed a similar outline today, at least the back end of it. Didn't look as clean today by any stretch of the imagination, but you did see Santos go in and get the 5 outs there at the end of the ball game for you yesterday. But the real story from yesterday's ball game, Steven, was Luis Robert Jr. What a majestic home run. You're rocking the La Pantera shirt there. Are you ready for some R roll, Steve?
I mean, I suppose I can give an R roll for him after he hit that Titanic home run. Look, we all know that when the ball comes off the bat of one Luis Jr., it explodes like a cannon.
Yeah, that thing was absolutely majestic. The real story about it though comes with the shushing of the Cubs fans yesterday.
A
Sort of
classy
sparked
bunch they always are.
a very classy bunch. As one of them who looks like Michael Sarah and Danny Parkins had a love child, flipped him off. It was definitely just a sight. And I've already seen that guy on Twitter, Tom Paints, who does all the paintings of the White Sox moments, has that painted. Really cool. Head on over, check that out on his Twitter account. I thought that was absolutely awesome that it's getting the recognition as a moment in Chicago sports history. And hopefully it's the moment that most White Sox fans will remember from this series. You know, Sox beat the Cubs there. We take a game. Didn't think we were going to get one, as I said before this. Didn't think we were going to get one. Tim Anderson scratched before yesterday's ball game. He was back in the lineup tonight. Steve, I don't know why we haven't just had Timmy serve the suspension yet. You have any thoughts on that?
Because the White Sox and roster management are a combination that don't go very well together. They don't seem to understand how to do it. You know, you'll have guys staying on the active roster, missing an entire series, missing 5 days at a time. So they're going to play a man down. This is just kind of what they do. We've seen this for a couple, 2, 3 years now. And this is just par for the course. And I fully expect it to continue.
There you go. Steve, I want to move on into today's ball game and talk a little bit about Mike Clevenger. What a masterful performance from Mike Clevenger tonight on the north side. Obviously, we know the end result to this ball game, but this was his best start, hands down, in a White Sox uniform. Just pure dominance from him today, Steve. You got any thoughts on his night tonight?
He threw the ball really well overall. Obviously, those first two hitters, you go out there and you issued the leadoff walk, and then you hit Horner. Um, Kind of gets off to just a very rocky beginning there in that first inning. And, you know, the Cubes are a team that is very patient at the plate. Having a good, sound offensive approach and plate discipline is one of the things that they do. Gee, what a novel concept. Um, I wish that, you know, I could see that once in a while. It would be a welcome sight. So you see him kind of get off to that rocky start there, and you're thinking, okay, this could be a short outing here. And he was able to regroup and get himself out of that. He got himself into another jam. I think it was in the third or fourth inning, and was able to wiggle his way out of it. And aside from that, he really just limited the hard contact. Any of the trouble that he got into really was just from his own doing ultimately. And he was able to make some big quality pitches when he had to, and throw zeros up there for 7 innings. So that's definitely the type of outing that you want to see from him. And he's thrown the ball very well since he came off the injured list. I think this is what his third start now off of the IL here, and he's really looked solid from that standpoint. And it really is fascinating to think that, you know, a contender out there didn't want to take a chance on him. We can talk all we want about, you know, the off the field stuff, if that was ultimately the deterrent in why he is still wearing a White Sox uniform. Who knows? But you'd have to think that there's got to be some teams out there like the Cincinnati Reds who have just completely fallen off a cliff that could use some starting pitching help. And yet here he is.
Yeah, I had a comment up there just a moment ago from Scott Crawford. Looked like Clevenger's best performance of his career. He goes 7 innings, only gives up 3 hits, 2 walks, 7 strikeouts. His ERA now sits at 3.26. Clevenger, I mean, you brought up the trade scenarios here. I think more or less it was probably due to the injuries, Steve. When it comes to the deadline, questions about his health, you can also throw some of the off the field stuff in there as well. But he's definitely looking like a guy that will get paid
See, I kind
potentially
of
this
disagree with
offseason.
that. I kind of disagree with the injury stuff there because, we saw Jake Peavy get traded while he was on an injured on the at the time disabled list. He had still missed another full month. Now, granted, there was only one Ken Williams run team in the league at that point, but I feel like we have seen guys get traded over the course of the last couple of years that have been on the IL at the time of the deadline. So to me, it just kind of seems like it was more so teams maybe not wanting to deal with the PR backlash from the off the field stuff.
Could be. That's a fair thought. I'm wondering if he's back in a White Sox uniform next year. I know the results have certainly been there so far this season for him, Steve, from a body of work standpoint. So it'd be interesting to follow him down the stretch and see what happens there. Sox were able to get out to an early lead in this one. Wild pitch offense in the top of the fourth inning. The Cubs defense looked just very White Sox-esque. Some lackluster stuff going on there. Bobbled ball out in left field. I believe that was Ian Happ, led to runners advancing, and then Sox able to scratch one across on the wild pitch. They did add two in the fifth, and my favorite way that the White Sox score runs, Gavin Sheets bombs, Steve. That's what we're talking about here. I love seeing that. It's been far too long. I saw some commentary coming online from the Peanut Gallery. That is the account called at NWI_Steve. I have to sort of
He likes to drop
know.
hashtag facts only.
I have to let everybody know that, I've been focused a lot on my golf game this summer. We haven't been working out in the backyard as much.
So what you're
I
saying
haven't.
is you've been more of a deadbeat dad than Rey Mysterio.
No, I'm not going to say that, because Gavin needs to learn to work on his own and really find that success. I can't be held accountable for his actions at his age now. I mean, it's time to prove it, Steve. It's really time to prove it for Gavin. But if I have to get called in here to correct things, I'll do my best. But I've sort of taken the summer to focus on me a little bit here. Less Gavin stuff. The other kids were getting a little concerned. They wanted some time themselves. And maybe we need to get back to some things. We'll figure it out. But it was a good, positive sign to see Gavin Sheets launch a baseball again, because it had been far too long. And that season for him so far is not something that I'm incredibly proud of. I know he wants to hit more, but sometimes this type of thing happens. You go for about a month and a half without hitting a bomb there for Gavin. And it's just good to see him back on the board there, putting some runs up, Steve.
Yeah, it was a nice swing. When he does connect to the ball, I mean, he can hit some majestic home runs there. And this was one of those. And as you mentioned there, it had been, 6 weeks since he had hit one at this point. I mean, the numbers overall for him since June 1st have just been downright gut-wrenching. So if there was a guy on the roster that needed that, he was definitely at the top of the list.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure Andrew Benintendi has a higher OPS right now than Gavin Sheets.
Anytime Noodle Boy has a higher OPS than you, then yikes, we need to have a conversation.
Well, we should still be talking about Tim Anderson in that regard. I think he's sitting at 569 right now.
Are we allowed to talk about that? Because I mean, isn't that going to make us bad fans though? If we point out the fact that he's not good.
Still, well, that we'll continue that here for a second. Along that line of thought, in the bottom of the eighth inning, the untouchable Aaron Bummer gives up a long ball to Nick Madrigal, who now has more home runs this season than Timothy Anderson.
I twittered this. Anytime you give up a home run to the Keebler Elf, you should be DFA'd immediately. If Aaron Bummer never throws a pitch for the White Sox again, it's deserved after that. He should be fucking embarrassed. Now, granted, it was one of those bullshit Mickey Mouse fucking home runs in that garbage dump, but still, it's fucking embarrassing.
Sale wants to know, Steve, what is the point of Aaron Bummer? I'm asking this question myself too, Sale. I don't know. This was a guy that the White Sox said at the deadline was untouchable. And he looks everything but untouchable here, especially when Nick Madrigal's taking you deep in a high leverage situation in the bottom of the eighth there. You, you couldn't have drawn this one up if you wanted to. Unbelievable. And you're right, Steve. The basket stuff.
Yes, Wrigley's a dump.
There, the basket stuff there is just it's a disgrace. It's worse than the Crawford boxes, in my opinion.
It's Mickey Mouse bullshit. Just call it what it is.
It is Mickey Mouse bullshit. Yeah, we've got a comment here from someone. Wrigley is a dump, and I think we can hashtag confirm that. I've only stepped a foot in that place once for about 5 innings of baseball, and I left early. Just I don't like it. I don't like to associate with it. Not my favorite place to be. And I've got to go to the comments from your favorite manager right now in the city of Chicago, Pedro Grifol, last night, talking about how he liked the atmosphere there. Steve, do you have any comments on his behalf for the comments that came in yesterday's postgame show?
Pedro Grifol can get fucked. Next question.
Steve did not like that question. You know, I was talking to Sean Roberts about this a little bit, Steve, in his thoughts here, and I sort of echo them as well. How tone deaf are you as the White Sox manager to talk about how great Wrigley Field is when you go back to Hawk Harrelson, Ozzie Guillen, people who've gained, I think, a lot of fans with their time with the White Sox? Obviously, very polarizing names as well. Some people hate them, but a majority, I feel like, respects them, at least as White Sox legends. How tone deaf can you be? And this sort of comes on the heels of, you know, Ozzie Guillen calling out Pedro Grifol for sort of big leaguing him when he wanted to talk to him in spring training about how to earn fan trust and navigate being a manager in the city of Chicago and all this other stuff. It rubs me the wrong way. 100%. Everything that just keeps coming out of this guy's mouth and the stories that have come from Ozzie and others really makes me think he is completely tone deaf to, you know, wanting to integrate himself into White Sox culture, White Sox fandom, or anything about it. In fact, he's acting like this is Kansas City still. And it's troublesome, at least for me as a fan. I don't like it.
He's clueless. Look, we've spent a lot of time talking about this. The guy is in over his skis. This should be the only season he ever manages in the big leagues. I think that's pretty obvious at this point. From handling the media, just some of the bullshit that he spews out of his mouth, to some of the in-game decisions, it's been an unmitigated disaster. You know, I wasn't really cognizant enough of the Terry Bevington era, but I've had some people kind of make that comparison. And, you know, I'd venture to say that Terry Bevington probably is regarded as the worst manager of my lifetime. Now, maybe there's a coincidence that some people confuse my dad as his doppelganger. So, I mean, there could be a correlation there. Who knows?
Interesting. Yeah, I wasn't really cognizant of that era either, Steven. But Sal's got a question. Do you think Montoya would have handled this team better? I don't know the answer to that. It was interesting the day that Pedro Grifol, I believe, served his suspension. Montoya was the acting manager for the White Sox, and then they sent, I think, the bench coach or somebody else out there for the post-game presser. So that doesn't really give me a vote of confidence in Charlie handling things very well here either, if he didn't want to face the Chicago media. I know he's got the managerial experience. I don't know. This coaching staff sort of reeks a little bit. That's just my opinion. It just reeks of not being interested in doing the right things to be accepted by the Chicago White Sox fan base. I don't know. That's a really interesting thought, Sale.
I mean,
Steve,
at
you got
this
anything
point,
on it?
though, I mean, let's be real about this, though. At this juncture, I think the only person that realistically would get accepted by a sizable portion of the fan base, I don't even know if it would be a plurality, but at least a sizable portion of it would be Ozzy. Who else would be accepted at this point, given the direction that this whole thing is going right now from top to bottom? It's a train wreck. Everybody can see it. And I just don't know that there's anybody, like I said, outside of number 13 that you could plug in there that enough people would think positively of.
I think you're correct. I think you're correct in that assessment. He's a guy that has his fingers on the pulse of this organization. He's somebody who's been successful here. Will if I don't think they will, but if he did come back, I'm sure there would be a fair share of people that don't like that. On the other side of that, though, I don't really think there is anybody that would like really come in and be accepted the way that Ozzy is. Sal's already here saying no Ozzy talk. 2005 was 18
That
years ago.
and Sal, my man, that's not me clamoring or pining or yearning for Ozzy in any way, but there is still that segment of the fan base that does still want him to be handling this team, even though, I mean, he kind of did quit on them in 2011. Um, those people like to forget about that, but whatever.
Well, I still think from a sense of somebody that's watched a lot of White Sox baseball that has the managerial experience, he's right up there with pretty much no one else in terms of somebody that's, I don't know, actively still around. Is he the right hire? Don't know, but you need a good PR move at this point. Sale doesn't want Ozzy or AJ. I don't think AJ is going to wind up being the manager of the Chicago White Sox. We got another question coming in here from US Sports Cards. If you could wave the white flag on this season and shut it down, would you, or do you see any value here? Steve, I'll go to you first.
God, that's a really good question. I think for me, yeah, I would shut it down, honestly, because the only the only thing really positive that you can glean from this season is Luis Robert Jr. And there's a chance that he could go out there and he could hit 40 home runs this year. That's really all we have to hang our hat on at this point is, can he get those next 8 home runs here over the course of these last 6 weeks? There's nothing else offensively on this team to watch worth anything. From a pitching standpoint, is anybody really like clamoring or running to the TV when Gregory Santos comes into the game outside of and I know obviously tonight didn't end well, and I mean you could kind of see the writing on the wall with that, but I mean we're talking about a closer here. Those are the two like real bright spots for this team here in 2023. And Clevenger was gone for what was it, a month or 6 weeks at a time, and that's obviously a very polarizing person within a large segment of the fan base here. So honestly, there's just not much positive to really take from this aside from the 3 to 4 times Luis Robert comes to the plate. So if you had the opportunity to shut it down, honestly, I think I kind of would. And we talked about this a ton last year, and I said on air frequently that the 2022 White Sox were the least favorite White Sox team of my life. Somehow this team has found a way to surpass even how unlikable that 2022 team was. And I didn't think that that was even possible, but here we are. So I really kind of can't wait for it to be over. And it sucks.
That's an interesting statement from you there, Steven. So that's sort of why I held on as long as I did last year with the hope that they would somehow, some way be able to get themselves back into it, because at least for all intents and purposes, we're not here right now. as White Sox fans in this position, because this has been an absolute dumpster fire of a season. Your star shortstop has been in the headlines for all of the wrong reasons, including being terrible at the plate. Yohan Moncada missed a ton of time this year, and you had your former first round draft pick come in, absolutely start mashing home runs at a rate that only Luis Robert was doing more than him, and then you traded him. Yasmani Grandal, one of the largest free agent signings in White Sox history. He's not a fire starter by any stretch of the imagination this year. In fact, he's had his own fair share of interesting headlines that have come out. Andrew Vaughn is not having a breakout season by any stretch of the imagination, Steve. I know,
but I think you can simplify it even more than the individual performances, though.
Oh, you can go up and down this entire roster and say why everything's been bad.
You absolutely can. But for me, when they lost the 10 games in a row in April, that was it right then. Everybody could talk all they wanted about how, there's 140 games left and all of that bullshit and everything. You could see it right there. You could see a team that lost 10 in a row that was dead to rights before we got out of the month of April. And this has been a slow death march ever since. They never got to a point when they were more than 6 games below 500 after that. I remember you and we were at that Saturday afternoon game against Miami when Jelly blew the lead in the 9th inning. That was the high mark of not the high mark of the season, because they were 1-0 at one point. But like after that 10-game losing streak, that was the highest they ever got. And then from there, it's just been all downhill. And the shit has been rolling downhill real quick.
It really has. And you throw in some other stuff out there. Liam Hendricks getting Tommy John after missing the first portion of the season. We all know that storyline. Nothing's gone right. Not a single thing outside of Luis Robert Jr. so far this season. So if I had to answer, yeah, I'd probably consider shutting it down. I enjoy watching baseball games. Other than that, there's really not much that really excites me.
I like watching Major League Baseball.
Yeah, I know, but this is the team that we chose to love, and yeah, this has been a hard year, no doubt about it. Super difficult year to get through, and I think that's a great question. One last follow up from U.S. Sports Cards: would this have been different if Abreu stuck around, or would the Sox clubhouse still have been weak sauce? I don't think Abreu was saving this at all. Not at all. In fact, there's still roster construction issues. Would I rather see Andrew Vaughn playing at this point than Abreu? Probably. I mean, if he did stick around, I think there's a chance that he winds up getting dealt at the trade deadline this year. And, maybe you get something back for him. I don't think they were going to sign him to a 3-4 year deal, but who knows? Sal says this team never got started. I would call it a failure to set the tone, or they set the wrong tone, Steve. They set the wrong tone. Their tone was, we're losers. And that's what they did this season. And it continues. It just continues to resonate through their play on the field. And you saw that again tonight. They played like a losing baseball team. Couldn't get runs across when you had prime opportunities to do so. And there you go. You tweeted it out right there after they failed to score and said, you can see this loss incoming. And there we go. And that's where we are. Sox dropped this one today. No surprises here.
No. You talk about the losing culture and everything, and I've made this statement several times on air here. The legendary Steve Ruzich, head baseball coach at South Suburban College, who I had the opportunity to play for 20 years ago, famously once said, when you accept losing, you're a loser. And right now, you guys are nothing but a bunch of fucking losers.
I think I've heard you say that one before. I've never met Coach Ruzich in my life, Steve.
But, he's a ball of fire.
His messages resonate through your voice here on these airwaves. I'm sure he tunes in and listens to his former stud pitcher out there chopping it up with some White Sox talk here on Sox on Tap. Steve, we've got more baseball coming up this weekend for the Chicago White Sox against what some may consider their biggest rival, the Colorado Rockies. I know that this is a heated series coming up here. Any thoughts on, the intensity that we're going to see this weekend in White Sox baseball as they square off against the Rockies out in Denver?
I mean, this is a big battle between, you might as well call this the Juan Uribe Bowl. But more importantly, this series has significant implications for the 2024 draft. Yes, this is what we have to talk about right now, because I believe
I don't want to talk about that shit.
It's not a matter of wanting to talk about it. It's just a reality here. I mean, the fact of the matter is, I think the Sox are one game behind the Rockies for the number 3 worst record in the league. And given the changes to the draft format now, if you have one of the 3 worst records in the league, you've got a 16.5% chance of the ping pong balls going your way and landing that top pick. So at this point, all you can really do is try to give yourself as good a position and as good of an opportunity as you possibly can to have the ping pong balls go your way. That's where we're at.
Steve, I almost don't want the White Sox. In fact, I don't want the White Sox to have the number 1 overall pick.
Oh, they'll screw it up. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I don't want them to have that pressure. I just don't. I don't trust them to make the right decision there, regardless of what it is. I don't know college scouting or prep scouting in baseball. I couldn't tell you who the consensus number 1 pick is going to be in next year's 2024.
Apparently, it's a really bad draft class, so the Sox will get the number 1 pick.
There we go. And that's where somebody's going to come out of that draft class. Sox could wind up with 1, 2, or 3, and they'll take the one guy that never fucking makes it. This is how this works. If you're a White Sox fan, you understand it. And God forbid the guy does make it all the way up to the major leagues, they'll trade him like Jake Berger. They'll just deal him off for more lottery picks. It's absurd. I'm broken at this point. At least it feels that way as a White Sox fan. Sales in here reminding me of how long we've talked about this team not being opportunistic. We've got Cubs fans in here. A ton of Cubs. Is Cubs on Tap live right now? Where the fuck are those guys? Get the Cubs fans over on the other stream.
They don't care about the Sox though. They don't.
And they're tuning into the show. Yeah. Thank you guys. We love having you here. It's a hospitable place.
Wrigley is an absolute fucking dump.
Steve,
place stinks like fucking piss.
Steve only says facts, I guess. Steven, any final thoughts on this edition of the Sox on Tap postgame show?
Whatever. Off day tomorrow. The death march continues.
It's a long, slow ride. Long, slow ride to the finish line here. We'll be back Sunday, fun day. Some variation of us. I probably will not be on the show. I'll be over at the BMW Championship. Tomorrow, I've got to sit in the car with Ron Luce, host of Cubs on Tap. I'm probably going to hear about the loss tonight and how great.
Is he going to unbunch his panties?
I don't know. I think he's fine now. I think he's fine now that the Cubs won. But season series with those guys are over. We're moving on to our number 1 rival, the Colorado Rockies, as we just stated here. And Steve, who knows? Maybe the White Sox will, lose a couple more games this weekend, and we can talk about having a chance at the top draft pick in 2024. Way to root for things. Final thoughts from me are, it's sort of blah at this point. There's not a lot of light ahead through the rest of this, and we're going to have some rather boring games. I did hear, though, through the grapevines that there might be this reverse boycott thing taking place on the 24th, Steven. You got any thoughts or intel on that?
Oh, I've got thoughts. And hopefully we make this thing come to fruition. And look, obviously, the shit stain that is Jerry Reinsdorf won't care, but I think it will be therapeutic in a number of ways for us to be able to go out there and just let him know how much we hate his guts and wish that he would end his reign of terror and leave the city of Chicago forever.
That'll likely fall on deaf ears. That said, Steve, that's it for today's show. Sure, you're following On Tap Sportsnet on Twitter or X, whatever it's. We're gonna change all the promos here. Follow On Tap Sportsnet on X. Follow Steve on X at NWI_Steve. You can find me on X at Tony on Tap. Wow, that just sounds bad, doesn't it? For some reason. You can follow the show at Sox On Tap. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube so you can come in here, drop comments while we talk about White Sox baseball and all the other sports here in Chicago at On Tap Sportsnet. That's it for me, Steve. White Sox forever.
Wrigley Field's a fucking shithole. White Sox for life.